Hello again, everybody. This is SQL Dan, and I'm here taking a look at another one of the questions from the Snowflake forums. Today we're going to take a look at a question about someone who is trying to derive week numbers beginning with July 1st of each year and then reset in July 1st of the next year. And he has created this data set, or the user, I should say, has created the data set using a recursive common table expression. And let's take a quick look at how that works right here. So a recursive common table expression can be identified by the fact that you have it called outside with the with statement, and then inside of the expression itself, it refers to itself. So we have a CTE named cusDate, and then inside of that CTE, it's talking to itself. And the way it works is there's always a seed query and then a union all, and then as it calls itself, it generates rows until it runs out of rows to generate. And in this case, the cutoff is this part of the where clause right here, that as it generates rows, and once it gets up to the current date, then it stops generating rows. And he's using July 1st of 2019 as his starting point, and he's assigning that as week 1. Then all of the other rows, the subsequent rows, get assigned whatever the number is from the previous row plus 1, and then it resets whenever, well, we'll talk about these conditions in greater detail, but essentially when it gets to be July again, it resets. And the reset that's happening here is number 2, and the reason the user did that is because record number 1 is right here. So the problem that they're having, though, is that the first year works great, but as they get to the second year, there's nothing in here that generates a week 1. And so the last record that gets generated is week 53, and then it jumps straight to week 2 again. And here is their query. I have it pasted in right here. And if we run it, we can see exactly what they expected for the first year with a starting point of the July 1st of 2019, and that's number 1, week number 1. And as we scroll through and as we get to the end of June in the next year, we see that this record right here, which began on June 29th and ends on July 5th, the user would like for this to be record number 1, because the 1st of July occurs in this record right here, yet it's actually showing up as record number 53, because, again, the case logic that they wrote is only trying to identify row number 2, and so this one just gets numbered above it. And so if we look again now, I want to go a little bit deeper into the case logic, and the case logic is simply looking at the prior record that's being called and says if that record is in month 6 for Monday, and the Sunday of that week is in July, okay, month 7. So in other words, the week began in June, but it ends in July. Or if the week begins in July and it also happens to be the 1st of the month, okay, then that is week number, then that means that the new record that's being generated is week number 2, because these conditions that are shown here on line 97 are actually the conditions that define row number 1. So the prior record, again, was straddling between June and July, or beginning on July 1st. Then the next record, the one that follows it, would be number 2. Well, again, they ran into this problem right here, and they did come up with kind of a convoluted way to solve it, using a row number, and they tried to assign a fiscal year to each one. And it's really complicated, and so I won't go into the details of that, although I will include a link to the original post on the Snowflake forums in a link to this video, so you can go and read that if you want. But the solution is actually much simpler than the poster made it to be. So the solution is, instead of starting the seed record as row number 1. Instead, you start it as row number 0. Because what that does is that means that row number 1 has to be generated in the bottom half of the recursive common table expression that's down here. And in each subsequent year, again, there would be logic for row number 1. So let me show you a couple of the quick changes that need to be made to do that. So instead of starting in the week that includes July 1st, all we do is we keep that same logic and subtract 7 from it. So there's my minus 7. Okay, and then I say I want this to be week number 0. So that's it for the feeder right there. And then at the bottom of the query, I'll exclude that row. So where num is greater than 0, basically. So we'll generate the row here just to be used as the basis for all of our other records, and then we'll throw it out once we get down here, once it's no longer needed. So now the changes we need to make in the bottom half are a little bit more detailed, but not much. Okay, so what we have here is we're generating the next Monday in the series by doing a date add to the prior Monday. So that's row 95, you see, referring to the Monday that's coming in. And the same thing with the Sunday, we're doing a date add of 7 days to derive the next Sunday by pointing to the prior Sunday. So what we've got to do is we've got to modify this line right here. And I'm just going to put some space just because it's all kind of put together and I want to make sure it's really clear what's going on. And we'll put the or on the next line. All right, and some space here. And finally some space here. So all of these are referring to the prior record because they're referring to the Monday that's getting passed in. And again, the new record will be a date add of 7 against that. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take all of the places that Monday appears down here and do this date add logic. So I'm going to copy this, Control C, and I'm going to put that in the 3 places where the Monday belongs. There's one. Oh, that's a Sunday. And here's number 2. And finally, here's number 3 right here. So when we do that, we've got these ones now referring to the current record instead of the prior record. We just need to do the same thing with this Sunday right here. So it's also referring to the Sunday of the current record and not the prior record. There we go. So the same logic. The week begins in June, ends in July, or begins in July and it happens to be the 1st. But now, instead of this being record number 2, this is record number 1, because now we're referring to this record as opposed to referring to the prior record, which we were doing before. So this becomes record number 1, and we can leave this right here, and we should be set to go. I'm going to comment out really quick. I added this where num is greater than 0. We'll leave that out for just a moment so I can run this query and talk it through. Okay. And let's go back up to the very first record. Here's the first record. This is my seed record that's coming from the top half of the recursive common table expression. All right, and we see this is the 1 week before what they had previously defined. Now we come down to week number 1, and this is the exact date range that previously had been hard-coded in the top of the RCTE, but now it's just a row that was generated by the bottom half of it. So that looks fantastic. That's exactly what we want. And again, we'll scroll down to the end of June. Okay, and we see right here, here's the last record that appears totally in June. Okay, number 52 starts on June 22nd, ends on June 28th. The very next record starts on June 29th and ends on July 5th. So obviously that crosses the 1st of July. So it has a number of 1 on it. And we'll just take a look at 1 or 2 more of these just to make sure that they all fit, but I'm pretty confident that they will. Here we go. Week number 1 of the next year goes from June 28th to July 4th. Let's see if we can find one that starts on the 1st of July. And I didn't prep ahead to see if we have any of those, but I'm hoping that after 5 or 6 years, we got a good chance of it. See, that one starts on the 3rd of July. It goes to the 2nd. Doesn't look like I'm going to make it. I might have to extend for a couple more years, but I'm pretty confident that this is going to work right here. So again, after that, much easier than what the solution that was offered on the boards was. All we got to do now is just throw away this first one by adding it as a where clause to the query that selects those records. And voila, we have the solution to the question that we have, where we can number all the weeks of every year starting with July 1st. Hope you enjoyed this. I hope it makes sense to you. If you have any questions about what I did, please put them in the comments. Or if you have any suggestions on how it could have been done differently, I'd also love to hear those. And please keep checking back, or maybe even subscribe, to see more of these solutions in the future. I appreciate your viewership, and thanks for watching.